Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where entrepreneurs thrive in chaos like surfers on wild waves, riding the highs, navigating the lows, and always looking for the next big break. Maybe we're built to beat chaos. And I think today's guest has some insights on that very topic. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Do you know that effective leadership development is the secret sauce to business success and growth? But so many leaders are left to figure it out on their own. Leaders aren't born, they're made. Ready to equip your leaders with the tools they need to thrive? One of the biggest challenges businesses face today is expecting managers and leaders to just naturally excel without proper training or guidance. We often promote high performers into leadership roles, assuming they'll figure it out because they already know how to do the thing. But the reality is, few are naturals, and most have never been taught how to lead effectively. And there's this gap, and that results in frustrated managers, disengaged teams, and missed growth opportunities. One of the key reasons growth stalls is exactly this right here. A survey by the Chartered Management Institute found that 82% of those who enter management positions hadn't had any proper leadership training. They're referred to as accidental managers. Anybody have any of those walking around? I've definitely been in environments like that before. A quarter of senior managers and leaders and half of other managers said that they had no formal management or leadership training either. Research notes that managers who have received formal training, they feel a lot more confident in their managerial abilities. 83% say they're confident. Without training, it's 71%. And I thought I would have expected a much bigger gap there. So 71% without training feel confident. 83% with training feel confident. And if you ask workers, 27%, so just a little over a quarter of those workers describe their manager as being highly effective. So that suggests to me there is a lack of effective leadership training for most managers, and that affects our businesses. So how do we bridge that gap and ensure that leaders have the skills they need to drive success? Let's explore 3 practical ways to develop our leaders effectively. First is structured leadership training programs. Invest in comprehensive training that covers essential leadership skills like communication, conflict resolution, strategic thinking. Tailor those programs to your organization's unique needs, ensuring that they're relevant and actionable, because all the value is really in the action. Do regular workshops, online courses, mentorship programs. All of those can play a part in this structured approach. The second is mentorship and coaching. Pair emerging leaders with experienced mentors who can provide guidance, share experiences, and offer advice. Coaching sessions help leaders navigate challenges and refine their skills literally in real time. This one-on-one support accelerates their development and builds confidence in their leadership abilities. 3, create a feedback-rich culture. Encourage a culture where feedback is given regularly and received. It has to go both ways because we need that. Constructive feedback helps leaders understand their strengths and areas for improvement. And we all have lots and lots of areas for improvement. And when we hear that, we can focus on them. Implement 360-degree feedback process where peers, subordinates, and supervisors all contribute to the leader's development. This holistic approach ensures that leaders get a well-rounded view of their impact and can make necessary adjustments. And, I used to think that leadership development was something that you did. You do it, you check the box, done, right? But developing leaders, and that includes ourselves, isn't just about boosting skills. It's about fostering an environment where continuous learning and growth are prioritized. It's ongoing. And by investing in leadership development, you create this ripple effect throughout the organization. Strong leaders inspire and empower their teams, driving higher engagement, productivity, and innovation. And the investment really, really pays off. It pays off exponentially as your business grows stronger from the inside out. Developing managers and leaders is absolutely crucial for business success and growth. So don't leave it to chance. Equip your leaders with the skills they need to excel. Invest in your leaders today and watch your business thrive now and right on into the future. Our founder on Tuesday was Jeremy Laceris, founder of Payment Brokers, and he's a serial entrepreneur with 8 exits. We talked about purpose-driven business, alignment, prioritizing sustainable growth, and avoiding dumb growth trends. Anybody want to do that? That sounds like a pretty good idea. And our expert guest last week was Osri Cohen, fractional CTO. We talked about fractional tech guidance, technical recruiting and screening, and how not to be taken advantage of by outsourced dev teams, especially if you're not technical yourself like me. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. Great stuff there. My guest today is Gary Harpst, seasoned leader and entrepreneur who transformed Solomon Software from a startup into a global force with over 400 employees and 40,000 clients before its sale in 2000 to Sage. Following his success, he founded Lead First, a platform dedicated to reshaping leadership within faith-friendly organizations. Wrote a new book called Built to Beat Chaos. And in there, Gary offers practical strategies rooted in biblical principles for transforming organizational chaos into order. And that sounds good. Emphasizing the importance of leadership and relational skills to achieve success and fulfillment. Welcome, Gary Harpst. Hey, Gary, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, it's good to be here. It's going to be fun.
Yes, it is. Well, tell me a little bit about your background, all the way back to the beginning, the introduction of the IBM PC to Great Plains to what you're doing now at Lead First.
Yeah, I'm in my 5th decade as a CEO, and way back when you're talking about was we started a software business. Let's see, 9 months before the IBM PC was introduced, and so we we were brilliant. Of course, we didn't know any of that. We just thought it'd be fun to start using PCs, and then it got really serious when IBM at the time was, really the Microsoft or the main player in the technology world. And so when they introduced the PC, everybody said, wow, this must be real. People began buying millions of PCs. They didn't know what to do with them. They just thought they should have one. And they were looking around for things to do with them. And accounting turned out to be one of the first things they could figure out to do. And that was back when they were all desktops. So they were single user systems. And that's how we got started. And it was just 20 years of rapid growth, making lots of mistakes. And, you had to grow 50% a year to keep up. It was crazy time. And so you end up learning a lot of organizational dynamics. Most technology was changing, but the organization was changing even faster. So a lot of learning.
That's great. So how did you transition from that to Great Plains Accounting, the sale there to Microsoft, and then what you're doing today in Lead First? How do those tie together?
Well, there's a lot of learning lessons that I mentioned that kind of precede the sale of the company. But about 10 years into the business, I had learned one of my toughest lessons, which is I'm an innovator. I like creating new things. And I had our company, we built one really successful product. And rather than maintain and take care of it, we started building another generation while the other one was still new, and it was foolish in retrospect. But we went on for several years and almost bankrupt the company working on a next generation product. And it took us so long. By the time we got there, Windows was emerging. Graphical interfaces. Nobody thinks about that today, but it didn't used to be that way. Everything was character based. And so here we had spent millions on a product that was the wrong product at the wrong time. And I had to ultimately lay off half our staff because I spent so much on that product. And I was not prepared. We were not prepared as a company for the graphical interface. And one of my toughest lessons that I talk about today was one, admitting failure and letting go. And I had to really be forced to do that because of economics. I didn't do it out of wisdom, and running out of cash will change everything. But
Yes,
here's
will.
yeah, right. Here's the bigger lesson was we only had 5 people we could put on the next generation product. And you think we had a competitor that had 100 people building that product, their version of that.
Wow.
And you look at 5 people and say, we've got no chance. But what happened was because we only had 5 people, that group got very creative and they figured out a way to build our accounting system out of off the shelf components. Like we used Visual Basic for our whole graphic interface, and nobody was using Visual Basic then. We were the first and largest Visual Basic commercial software product. That
Wow.
saved us enormous time. We used somebody else for a report writer. The net result was in 2 years, we shipped within 30 days of our competitor who had 100 people on their project.
That's
And
amazing.
why I tell that story is that led our greatest failure led to our greatest success because over the next 6, 7 years, we grew 500%, 600%, and our success came out of failure. And so there's a huge lesson here. Anyway, that growth caused us to be probably number 3 in market share in the United States. And we were the last non public player in the SMB, small mid-sized business accounting marketplace. And so that made us interesting for acquisition because the ones who were public were looking to grow market share.
Just the journey and adapting to change, dealing
Hmm.
with much larger competitors
Yes.
and finding ways to win. And you talk about that in your book, Built for Chaos,
Yeah.
and how chaos really drives innovation and
Yes.
you can thrive in that. The
Yes.
concept of chaos as a resource. You expand on that a little bit?
Yes, I have to share a little of my own personal worldview. Everybody has something that drives their beliefs, and
Yeah.
I happen to be a biblical student and Christian. And so, where I really thought about the positive side of chaos was Genesis account of the Bible. It says, you ask people who've gone to Sunday school, say, "What's the first thing God created?" And they say, "Oh, I think it was light," or something like that. I said, "Well, if you really read carefully, it says He created chaos first. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and they were void and without form, which is really a definition of chaos. And so you realize, well, chaos must not be bad if God created it. What's modeled in Genesis is we were created to bring order out of it. And God does that in the Genesis account. He takes dark to light, he separates water from land. And so all of that is an encouragement to people in the business world. You feel like you're overwhelmed by chaos. Our clients every day they use that word chaos, but chaos can only be managed when you have purpose. As soon as you have
Mm.
purpose, then you begin to know that, oh, the chaos is just raw material. All these things that I'm struggling with, those are raw materials that I can use for my purpose. And so, really, chaos is more of a source, a resource of resources we just haven't yet organized. So, if you really had no chaos, you would have no resource because it basically means all the resources being used for something else. So, chaos is unused resource.
I love that. Just as an entrepreneur, I deal with chaos all the time. I know a lot of our listeners do as well. But it
Yeah.
just changes that perspective and thinking
Yeah. Yeah.
about, it's the resources there. How do I organize that and turn that into
Yeah.
something that makes sense? And
And, here I am after all these years. I still wake up in the morning and feel overwhelmed. I got too much to do, got family things, grandkids, and then work things. And you just do feel overwhelmed. And if you take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, what is my purpose for the day? You begin to have a discipline for battling that sense of overwhelmingness. We have gotten to the point in society where we don't know how to dialogue with each other, and our answer is to what I call an or philosophy. Either you do it my way or I'm going to fight against you and try to force you into my beliefs. And That's not the biblical model. And the biblical model is you are true to your beliefs, you understand them, you're clear, but you welcome other people and don't try to tell them what to do. You just are clear about what you believe. And so I think it's particularly relevant. That's how it's affected my worldview.
Mm.
I was talking to a gentleman the other day that was an atheist, and he was really upset with something he'd read about my beliefs. And I contacted, I said, well, I assume you're on a journey of trying to figure out what's true in your life. And he said, yes. And I said, well, then I embrace that. I would rather
Yeah.
work with somebody who knows what they believe and are really trying to pursue that belief than somebody that doesn't care or know. And he was really taken back by that. And he says, well, I think you're the kind of person I could have coffee with. And I said, absolutely. I welcome talking with other people. Now, where it crosses the line is I don't want other people to tell me what to believe either.
Sure.
Right? I don't want people to say, "Well, you're wrong, and therefore you shut up." That's not right either. So it's a mutual respect, and we've lost that a lot of that in our society.
How do we get that back?
That's a
$1,000,000
that's a
question, right?
that's a good question. Well, the people act out of what they believe,
Yes.
and so if we want to affect beliefs in society, there's 60 million children in education system, and there's 150 million people in the work system. And you work for 40 hours a week and you go to school for whatever, maybe 30 hours a week plus extracurriculars. And you go to church for an hour.
Sure.
Yeah. And so where do we do good? And we have to do good in our work settings, and we have to do good in our education settings, and we need to really engage with people. And so the book itself that I wrote was about how leaders, I think, have the most important calling there is, which is to help people figure out what they want to do, purpose, and get it done and work with each other with respect doing it. So I think we make the world better by modeling good principles. Most people agree with what most of the Bible says. Tell the truth, don't steal, don't lie,
Right.
don't take stuff that isn't yours, treat people like they were created in the image of God. Those are pretty basic principles.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's hard to argue with that for sure. I
Yeah.
think almost all of us, or I would say all of us,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. So, how have you integrated faith and values into business practices and train leaders to do that as well? And how does that positively impact operations and employee satisfaction?
Well, years ago, what was it? I think Stephen Covey's son wrote a book built doing business at the speed of trust.
Yes.
And, that's, I think, one of the most fundamental things about being a Christ follower is you're supposed to be truthful and open. And if you don't do, that's what builds trust. And organizations run on trust. And I just got an insurance quote yesterday. My wife and I were freaking out about a 35% increase in our home insurance.
Wow.
And we were talking about this thing of trust. Let me make the connection. We have a really good agent. I contacted her and I said, "Is this right? What's going on?" And she covers other insurance programs, and she said they're all going up, and some have gone up 70%. And I told my wife, I said, "Do I trust this agent?" Right? Because if I don't trust her, I've got more work to do. I've got to contact somebody else, get a different set of quotes to find out what she's already told me. It's a silly example, but the point is lack of trust is a tax on society. If I don't
Mm,
trust you, then I have to do more work in case you're not telling me the truth. And so when a society breaks down or an organization breaks down and people don't trust each other, they start backstabbing, you lose efficiency and you lose effectiveness. It just all comes apart. And I know it's a long answer to your question, but the very first rule of putting your faith into practice is tell the truth. And
it's big.
so people can trust you. You can build on that.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that just goes not only from the outside when you're talking about bringing clients in, but also employees and satisfaction. That goes a long way. You
Yeah,
say
that's right.
something and you do it even when it's not convenient, even when it hurts, even when it didn't turn out the way everybody thought it would, and
That's
you
right.
keep your word anyway.
Yeah, and by the way, to tell the truth, it applies to everything. What I mean, the specs for your product, are they honest? Are you bringing in good materials? Does the label on my vitamins really reflect what's in the container? Do, do the things I say during the sales process, are they accurate? These are really hard things to apply. We say, "Oh, tell the truth." Of course, I tell the truth. Well, you really think through everything you say during the day. It's very easy for me or anyone to accommodate what you think the situation needs when at its root, it's not quite truthful.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, describe the pyramid model that you use for business success. What are the foundational elements that other business leaders should be thinking about?
Well, we developed this model to help talk to people that don't believe what we do or just haven't thought about it. And if you think about integrating faith at work as that pyramid, a three-level pyramid. The base level is, I use the analogy, take care of body, soul, and spirit. The body is
Nice.
running a really good organization. People want to work. Everybody, I don't care what their faith is, they want to work for an organization that's successful. They can count on a paycheck tomorrow. So there's this basic level of taking care of the body, which is quality products, quality services. This is a place that I want to work because it's successful. So that's the body layer, and there's no disagreement among anybody, any faith in the world, any world's view. Everybody wants that. The
Sure.
next the next layer is emerging more and more as a need that's being identified explicitly, which I call soul care. It's where people are treated the way you want to be treated. It's, the golden rule kind of thing. But I think companies are beginning to realize, especially post COVID, that employees are lonely, they're
Yes.
isolated, and this generation is struggling a lot more at the soul level on the inside of them. And so the companies are being more intentional. There's an emerging class of application services that are called soul care, where people will call, they're outside the organization. They're like chaplains in the army. They're outside the command, chain of command, and they call people and say, "Is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything we can help?" And it's, one guy characterized it, it's a friend for hire. But it's a recognition that there's something more to people than just their job. There's the inside part of them, their family, and those sorts of things. So companies are being more intentional, recognizing, how do we take care of people, not just to do their job, but think about them as a whole person. And I would say all faiths would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a love your neighbor as you love yourself kind of treatment. Now, the third level, it gets to be more unique depending on what your worldview is or your faith system. And we call that spirit care. And in the Christian world, there are things that Jesus says he can do that I can't do for myself. So, as a neighbor, I can help you if you need help or give you some money or um, visit you in the hospital. But the gospel, it seems funny to talk about this in a business setting, but the gospel is that there's things that are wrong with us that we can't fix.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so we try to be clear to people, look, if you want to operate at layer one or layer one and layer two, we're all in agreement. But we wouldn't be honest with you if we didn't at least say, if you want to know more about this promise, we can point you to resources or tell you. But we wouldn't be honest if we didn't tell you there is at least a promise from the Christian theology that Jesus can do stuff nobody else can. And so we don't shove that down people's throat, but we try to create strategies with our client that says, if people want to know about that, we do have a way to connect them. You don't ever force it. The way the
Sure.
Bible says it is, be ready to tell someone who's interested.
Right.
Don't, don't, it doesn't work to jam it down their throat. It never did.
I like the pyramid so much because it just makes so much sense to think about that. And I think as companies, we really have gone through that transformation where it was
Hmm.
all about work, and then
Hmm.
they started really thinking about body and fitness and those kinds of things. And there's employee wellness
Yeah.
became a thing, and then that moved into mental health specifically
Yeah.
after the pandemic. And there's a lot more around that, which I think is really good. And
Yeah.
then you have that top layer where we all look around and we see things in the world are not the way that they ought to be. We have this inside ought of it ought to be different than it is, but not necessarily why is it that way, or how do we fix it. And so
Yeah.
there may be differences there that
I
people have.
love
I
that
think that's
phrase.
really
I've never heard anybody say
important.
that. The inside ought.
Yeah.
That that is a wonderful. Who was it? Somebody said there's a vacuum in the hearts of us, that there's something missing, and
Yes.
it's the inside ought. Yeah, I am going to
Yeah.
use that if you'll let me. I like that.
Ready to dominate your market and skyrocket your revenue? Dive into Small Fish Big Pond, building a world class business that swims circles around competitors. This book is packed with powerful marketing and leadership lessons guaranteed to transform your business and operate world class. Small Fish Big Pond delivers proven strategies to sharpen your marketing message, deliver unmatched value to your clients, and guide your prospects' buying journey to one inevitable conclusion: that your company is the only solution for them, except no substitutes. Inside, you'll find step by step frameworks and time tested growth principles to attract your ideal clients, convert them, and then build them into your passionate brand ambassadors. Get your copy today in print, ebook, or audio at smallfishbigpond.com or Amazon. Plus, remember, every book sale supports charity. So dive in and make a difference.
You know, I became a Christian. I'm an engineer. I like designing things and building things, and I saw symptoms in my life. To your point, inside ought. I saw inconsistency in the ways I behave, and I couldn't really understand it. And I saw it in everybody else around me, where I'd say one thing but feel another, and it's like this schizophrenic person. And I read lots of things, but different worldviews, psychology, self-help books. I'm a reader, and I reread the Bible, and it turns out it gave an answer that I had never heard or considered, which is there is literally something wrong with us. We're born with deficiency. It's almost like a genetic deficiency, that we don't really want God, and that we're created by God and we don't want him, and that is the root of what's wrong. And when I realized that, it's set me free in the sense of I quit struggling with trying to understand why I was the way I was, and I began to accept there's that part of me that's like this, and I try to just push it push it aside or put it in the background and live what the Bible calls more of a full life or a new life that's empowered by God. And it's, for me, it's real. It's changed
Absolutely.
everything I do and think.
Yeah. And it's one thing to try and do that on our own, but
Yeah,
without that transformation and
yeah.
really, changing from the inside out, it's not from the outside in. That
I
transformation that's the whole key.
Yes. And by the way, I love that inside out. That's really what leadership is. Leadership is not being shaped by the forces outside of you. Leadership is working from the inside out. This is my purpose, and you start to have an effect on your own alignment, inner alignment, and then on the people around you. And when I say leadership, I don't mean a job title. Every person is a leader of themselves, self
Yes.
leadership. And so I love your inside out analogy. Chaos is living in chaos means you're letting chaos dominate you.
Mm,
Living inside out means you're starting to dominate the chaos.
love that.
Yeah,
Love
that's
that.
freedom.
Yes. Yeah, true freedom.
Yeah, that's right.
And so tell me a little bit about Lead First. How did that come about? And how does that fit into the worldview and what you're doing in companies today?
Well, I laugh because there's a story of Moses, who's one of the primary leaders in the Old Testament. He had 40 years in one phase of his life, 40 years in another, and then 40 years in a third. He lived to 120. I'm assuming I won't live to 120, but I think I'm in my third 20-year phase. And the second 20-year phase, after first 20 years was Solomon Software, that rapid growth experience, and we sold it. The next 20 years was me coaching younger organizations on how to use technology to manage their businesses more effectively. And we learned a lot about coaching and organizational development. My third 20 years, which prompted the book to be written, was I've never done a good job of teaching others how to integrate their faith in the way they're running the business. And the more I talked to people, the more I realized that they didn't even know you could do it. They didn't believe you could do it. And they've been silenced into thinking it. They put their faith in the drawer and don't really know how to integrate it. And it turns out it's very practical, and there are many people who are doing it, but we just don't know about it. So, lead first is a we now are changing what we call it, but it's an employee relationship management system. Every organization understands customer relationship management. They
Yes.
know they need systems and processes to manage a relationship with the customer. We believe every organization needs an ERM, employee relationship management, but they need it informed by biblical principles. And uh, just basic stuff like, when you see someone, do you see someone that works for you as a means to your end, or do you see them as somebody created in the image of God?
Mm,
It
so good.
changes the way your attitude towards people. It doesn't
Yes.
mean it doesn't mean you don't fire somebody who can't do their job, but your motive is different. I've had to move people out of jobs many times, but my motive was, it's not good for you to be in a position where you can't be all that God created you to be. It's a
Yeah.
form of lying to somebody to say, it's okay, you can work half speed here and not be engaged. It's wrong. And so it changes your motive, but working for the Lord is a high standard. He wants excellence and quality in products and services and relationships, and that changes your motives. So we try to teach leaders, whether they believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ, there still are basic principles that are good for any organization. So that's what Lead First is all about. How do you integrate technology, leadership development? We do mentoring. How do you come alongside and put the whole package together to build stronger teams? And
Yeah, it's really important. So what is it that the platform does in employee relationships? How does it manage those? How do you train leaders? And what does that look like in the workplace?
yeah, we made a list of all the things that leaders really need to face on a day to day basis. And for example, they need to have clear plans. They need to know what
Yeah.
they want. That's the first job of a leader, is to pick purpose. So whether it's strategy or a department plan, be clear about what you want and how you're going to measure it. So we provide tools for documenting, creating plans, and having business intelligence to measure whether they're being done. That's an example. People need to run, this sounds crazy, run good meetings. People kind of wince and they say meetings are a waste of time. Meetings are the primary tool you have for building teams and setting the culture. It's hard to have a football game without, or a football team without having huddles. And
Right.
so running good meetings that are purposeful and coach people to do what's right, to instill the values in every conversation. So, doing meetings well is something we spend a lot of time on. How do you keep follow up actions? Because people forget who said was doing what. We don't do it very well. So that's another one. Performance reviews. How do you give people feedback that really helps them, not the mandatory once a year, check the box and everybody hates doing it? It's more, how do you understand the person? We do behavioral assessments. So you have more tools to say, what motivates this person, and have open dialogue. So it's quite a list of things. If you just make a list of what most leaders have to do on a day to day basis, we've got technology, training, related to all those topics. So
Outstanding. That's what every leader needs. I think a lot of people move into that leadership role, and especially first time, and they don't get that. You're just thrown in there and expected to just know how to lead people and how to make those decisions and how to think through that without a lot of real training or
mhm.
frameworks to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, and I think the framework part the training is really important. The framework is what brings some order out of there's so many things to do. Got long-term plans, short-term plans. You got the surprise that just came up this morning. You got somebody called in sick. You hired the wrong person. You got the wrong person in the wrong job. You just have a lot of chaos. And if you don't have
Yes.
a framework, if you give somebody a framework, they can begin to learn. And that's really the purpose of the framework. It isn't magical. It just creates some order so you can learn and get better.
So what are some common challenges that organizations face when they try to embed their values into, every aspect of the business, and how do they overcome those challenges?
Well, I think one of the first challenges is the leadership at the top, the owner. By the way, the Bible's very clear about some people say to be a Christian means not to own anything. It's not true. The Bible is very emphatic about we are supposed to own, and ownership means take responsibility for. So in our
Right.
family, my wife and I, we are responsible for what goes on in our family. That's ownership, and God's
Yep.
holds us accountable. So an organization that really wants the right kind of culture has to start at the top. The people who own the business have to be authentic in what they believe and open about it. If they don't do that, the foundation is not there. I, as an individual worker in there, can be affect what I do, but I can't have the same impact as the owner does on the whole ecosystem. So that's number one, is be clear about what you believe and be authentic about it. Just be open about it. And people will not they'll trust you much more if you just lay your cards on the table and says, "Look, I'm not telling you what to believe, but this is what I believe."
Yeah.
And most people would rather work for somebody who knows that their faith says they've got to treat me right. They then okay, I don't believe in their God, but I do believe that they believe in their God, and
Yeah.
that's going to affect how they treat me. That's good news. And so that's one. The second thing is we all succumb to this idea of we like to simplify life to be this or this. The truth is, running a business has to be hardcore quality marketing. All the pieces of running a good business have to be there, and that takes skill. You can't just pretend you know how to design something or build. So there's this hardcore knowledge about whatever your expertise is to build a great service or product, and you have to treat people right at the same time. And so often, most personality types, I'm a high D, which is I'm project oriented, get things done. I think in terms of goals, not people. And then there are people oriented that think are just the opposite. All they think about
Right.
is people. They get all their energy talking with people, but they don't know how to do anything. And we need each other because you can't give up on either. Does not honor God to run an unsuccessful business.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and there's no impact for that either.
that's
If
right.
it's a loser, if it fails, then, where's the impact in the world?
Yeah, and so that's a huge challenge. I think back to where I was when I first started running a software company. I didn't know how to build software, test it. We didn't know how to determine market requirements. We didn't know how to support people, on and on. We had to just learn the hard way. And at the same time, we had to learn how to treat people right, even when we were frustrated. So I'm still on this journey. I still get frustrated and I
Oh,
still
me
get too
too.
task oriented. Fortunately, I married a woman who is more people oriented, and she keeps reminding me, "Oh, you got grandkids over here. Now, what are we going to do with them?"
Yeah, we definitely need those other people to help balance us out so we
Well,
don't
we
swing
do.
too far in one direction or the other.
We do. Yeah. So,
So
the old adage, you got to walk and chew gum.
right.
It's a silly adage, but there is so much truth that what God calls us to is multiple things working together. You can't put all your emphasis on your family. You can't put all your emphasis on your work. You have to be able to do and, not or. And that takes more skill.
It really does.
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned the idea of chaplaincy programs, and you mentioned the Army earlier, but you're doing that in organizations, part of that. And I think that's really innovative. Tell me about how the chaplaincy program works and the benefits.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. An interesting. That's new to me. This idea in the last, we had it in our business, but we didn't call it that and didn't know that's what it was. We've come to find there's two major organizations, Corporate Chaplains of America and Marketplace Chaplains, that have found out that employee relation or caring for people, there's some things where caring for people is better done by someone outside of the organization. This is a strange phenomenon, but when you hear it, but here's why. If I'm struggling, back to the whole person and health, let's say I've got a
Yeah,
great job, I love it, but I'm struggling with some addiction. It could be a drug addiction, a pornography, who knows? We all have these things that eat away at us, and
sure.
you're not likely to share that with your boss.
Yeah,
You might share it with a coworker if you really trust them. Well, chaplaincy organizations have learned that they can come into an organization and offer a channel of communication that is completely private, and there's a firewall between HR and the organization and your conversations with these people, and it really works. And I'll tell you one story that shows the journey. Day one, what happens is the CEO comes in and blesses that, look, this is why we're doing this. We're doing it for you. This is completely confidential. And the chaplain, if you're interested, here's how you contact the chaplain. And they visit on site, get to know people, but it's all voluntary. Well, one guy came up to this chaplain and said, well, I got some things I'd like to chat with you about, but I do not ever want to hear Jesus or church out those words out of your mouth. Does that mean you don't want to talk to me? And he said, no, I want to be your friend. And so this went on for 5 years. This guy built a relationship with the chaplain. Chaplain got to be friends, and he honored that for 5 years. Well, in the sixth year, the guy got cancer. And
wow.
he came to the chaplain and he says, I've appreciated you've always honored this request, but he says, I'm now thinking about death. I want to think about what happens after life. And I would like to open the door to what I told you I never want to hear about. And so he shared the good news of what Jesus promised to do in eternity. And he began to believe in that. And he did die, but his wife said he was a changed person, and she came to the chaplain and said, could you do his funeral service? We don't even have anybody. We don't belong to a church. We don't have anybody. And so he shared this guy's story at the funeral service, and other people became interested in the spiritual dimension of their life. So that's the way chaplaincy works. It's basically you love on people and you let them go where they want to go in terms of the relationships, and it works. And we did that in our company, but it turned out one of our founders was not a software guy or anything like that. He was an older fellow than me, and he just was our in-house chaplain. He loved helping people, and so we were doing chaplaincy for years before we even knew that the concept existed, and it really works. So one of the things we do, Lead First does when we work with clients, is we come into the a leader and say, what is it? What is your vision? What do you want in terms of whole person care? Do you just want to operate at this bottom layer, middle layer, top layer, that pyramid? And we help them. We've studied what's available in the services that are out there, types of chaplaincy and things that we provide. And we just help them piece together a strategy that fits what they want. And if they want a way to offer the third layer, we can show them ways to do it and do it in a winsome way and not offensive way. So it's all strategy. What do you want?
Outstanding. Yeah, just love that concept of the whole person care because we don't have business in a box and life in a box. It is all completely interconnected, and we're
Yeah,
the same people, in the office and out of the office and remote, and at client sites and at home and everywhere else. So just having that whole person
mhm,
care, and something that I think so many people are missing. If
yeah,
if they don't get it through their job or through work, a lot of times it's just not there at all, and so it really
yeah.
helps
I agree.
create
And
much
you look how
greater
much
employee.
time we spend there.
Yes.
If we got a hole there, pretty hard to make up for it somewhere else. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
So within Lead First, what are some of the ways that you see that evolving over time? And we're at this really interesting crossroads. Like you said at the beginning, the transition from character based to Windows, and I think we saw that,
Mhm.
25 years ago from installed to really this new thing called the internet, and now
Mhm.
we're looking at AI. I think another
Mhm.
big transition point in technology. We're at this crossroads in your case, faith, technology, and business. How do you see that evolving over that, let's say, the next 5 years, 10 years?
I think that's a really excellent question because things keep changing. And when you're as old as I am, you see these waves of change and how they impact everything. And so AI, the wave have been in the last 20 years with the internet, has caused an explosion of information and sources. I look on my desktop right now and I've got at least 10 apps that each give me messages, right? And I've got my
Sure.
email and I got my phone text. So I think one of the first applications of AI, and we're seeing it already, is the aggregation, integration of data from multiple sources and making it coherent. So here's an example in Lead First. We haven't done this yet, but we're working on. I've got hundreds of videos where I talk about principles. I've got all the text of the book. I've got we've got training on how the software works. You got this massive amount of information. Well, if I'm a leader, I would like to just be able to go into Lead First and say, "Look, I am struggling with this particular employee. Here are the symptoms. What should I do?" Well,
Really good.
the sources that they can think about is I've got 3 or 4 videos that might have touched on something relevant. How do they find those? We've got some articles on that. We've also got their behavioral assessment that tells us how they behave in certain situations. We see that as the next wave for us is we have a lot of unique content and we bring the biblical perspective principles to that content. But AI would really help people find what they need without having to wade through hours to figure out where the gems of relevant content are. So I think that's the first thing that AI is starting to do already is integrate content. Beyond that, more specific recommendations, for example, marrying follow-up actions in a meeting, taking notes in a meeting and identifying follow up actions, marrying that with the strategic plan to say why this needs to be done is more than just aggregating information. It's proactive. It's saying, here's some things you should do in your strategy that were identified in 3 different meetings. So we see that as the next phase after aggregation of information.
Outstanding. I love that. There's so many things going on that continuing to develop people and leadership development, and so many more resources available to
Mhm.
help organize that chaos.
Amen. I agree. One part or one thing that I was asked in my very first college class was a sociology 101 when I was a freshman. And the professor asked this question that has obviously stuck to me this day more than 50 years ago.
That's good.
And here's the question. He said, "Why is it we've advanced so far technologically?" At the time this question was asked, we just landed on the moon. Why is it we've advanced so much technologically, but not at all socially?
Mm,
And that question is really profound because if you look at the history of man, 10,000 years ago, we were on walking and now we go to the moon or, it's just incredible. I read the other day that there was 2 billion people that flew somewhere in the world last year. Why is it that we have this unbelievably geometric growth in technology? Now AI is coming faster. We've got energy breakthroughs with fission energy. We've got computing breakthroughs with quantum computing. We've got artificial intelligence. When we put all this together, what, what could happen? But the truth is, we don't relate to each other any better than we did 10,000 years ago, right? The very first family had murder. In the Bible,
right.
it
Right.
says that Cain slew Abel.
Yeah.
And we're no different. We just have more technology to treat each other bad. And I only
That's
bring
the
this
true.
up. I only bring this up to say if we've got to keep up with technology, but the real problem is human relationships. And to be honest with you, technology is not going to fix that. It may help me have more time to fix it, but human relationships is where the action is, where our barriers are. And that's how you and I relate to each other. How do we agree on what's important and how do we work together to get it? That's never going to change. Technology is not going to change that.
Absolutely. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Lead First online?
Oh, just go to our website, leadfirst.ai, and I blog, and I've written 3 books, and we really want to work with people closely, build relationships. We don't want just to sell software. We want to mentor, and we got enough software that I can go press a button. We need relationships. So we're very much into relationships. So, but just go to our website. Hey, I have my phone number on there. I have my email on there. I'm at an age and stage where I value nothing more than talking to people about their life and how to integrate faith into it if they want to talk about that.
Excellent. We'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes. And everybody should pick up a copy of the book, Built to Beat Chaos. It is
Yeah,
absolutely outstanding. You can get a free chapter on the Lead First website as well.
that's
And so you
right.
can get
Yeah.
started there.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate what you do, Jeff. Just your podcast itself brings order out of chaos because people are trying to figure out what to do and how to do it, and you bring different perspectives on doing that. So I thank you for ordering my chaotic world.
Thank you. Appreciate you being on SaaS Fuel. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks again, Gary, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. I really appreciate your commitment to leadership, whole person care, and development, and just love the faith based aspect of the business. You can learn more about Gary and Lead First at leadfirst.ai. As always, all links, resources, highlights, full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, check us out on our YouTube channel as well, continuing to grow there slowly but surely. Full video episodes, video shorts, trainings, outtakes, lots of fun stuff over there. So check us out on YouTube. It's at Champion Leadership. Thought leaders share. So who are you going to impact today? If this episode resonated with you in your journey of leadership growth, share it with someone walking a similar path. It will definitely appreciate that. And everyone who shares this week gets a panic proof poncho. Hey, it's not waterproof, but it's worry proof. Drape it over your shoulders during a crisis and watch your stress levels drop. Mostly because it's hard to take yourself too seriously in a poncho. It'd be nice if something like that really worked, right? Well, join us next Tuesday where our founder is Baird Hall, co-founder at Churnkey. You don't want to pour revenue into a leaky bucket? I don't either. We'll be talking about how to plug those holes and make churn a non-issue because Churnkey is the key to churn. And next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have best-selling author and customer experience expert Richard Weilman. He'll share insights on elevating the client experience and the importance of relationships in driving revenue. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!